Hey, I'm Serenity and this is my channel, and today we're joined here by Nova. And today I have an episode of Charlatans and Swindlers for you. I know it's been a long time, but these videos take forever to make, and honestly it got to a point where I didn't even want to finish the script because I've been doing it since July. So if you have no idea what Charlatans and Swindlers is, we'll get into it in a minute. But timestamps are always down below. Skip around, skip straight to the story if you want to. Go for it. Please use them. I write them out for a reason. So today we're going to be focusing on Elizabeth Holmes, the show The Dropout, and the real story. Mostly the trial in the real story. So let's get into it. So Charlatans and Swindlers is a series here on my channel where in late 2021 I noticed that a lot of big media companies were producing shows based on real true crime stories, and there were stories that I have heard before, so I was comparing the two as I would watch the show. It gave me the idea to make a series where I watched a show based on a true crime and then I report on the show, followed up by the true story, so you know what's true and what's not. And mostly all of the Charlatans and Swindlers, they have to have one thing in common, which is money. So I've covered Anna Delvey, the Tinder Swindler, Ham Hupp, a bunch, and I usually do this about once a month. So today we're focusing on Dropout. If I'm looking off to the side at all, it's because my script is right here. We have a lot of information to cover, so let's go. Don't forget to grab a drink, a blanket, a snack, and let's start the story. So the Dropout show opens with a deposition taking place on July 11th, 2017 at 9 a.m. in California. The FBI is interrogating Elizabeth Holmes into her company, Theranos. We'll bounce between this deposition hearing throughout the series of the show. Then we cut to another interview profiling Elizabeth. It's revealed that Theranos is a word for diagnosis and therapy. They currently have 500 employees with an evaluation of $900 million. The company is able to perform 200 standard ordered blood tests, and 70 of those are on a single drop of blood. Elizabeth Holmes was just announced as the youngest self-made billionaire. Then we flash back to her childhood in December 2011, where Elizabeth is speaking Mandarin in the car listening to an educational CD in preparation for her senior trip abroad in the upcoming summer. It's revealed that Elizabeth's father, Chris Holmes, has just lost his job, and the company named Enron has just become bankrupt. Chris Holmes is infuriated about how his company lied to him about everything. All their work was fraudulent, foreshadowing his daughter's future fraudulent behavior. Elizabeth's mother, Noelle Holmes, tells her husband that they can just ask her friend's, Lorraine's husband, named Richard Fuse, for help with their current situation. So all the Holmes family goes over to the Fuse home, where Elizabeth brags about how she is going to Stanford College to study bioengineering in the fall as a President's Scholar, which is a program where each year up to 161 students are named U.S. Presidential Scholars, one of the nation's highest honors for high school students. The scholars represent excellence in education and the promise of greatness in young people. She talks about how she wants to become a billionaire after graduation and wants to start a tech company. Richard tells her that he's in that industry, and Elizabeth rudely interrupts him, saying that doesn't he just file patents to be paid off when other people use the invention. Richard, annoyed, tells Chris Holmes that he has his old home, which he hasn't sold yet, and the Holmes can stay there. But Elizabeth is so against taking Richard's handout. Now we learn as a teenager that all Elizabeth wanted to do with her life was invent something new for mankind, something they never had been able to do. Her bedroom is covered in Steve Jobs posters as she idolizes the Apple CEO. On her senior immersions program in 2002 in Belgium, China, Elizabeth meets Sunny Balwani, who will be her future boyfriend and business partner. The two click right away because they both speak Mandarin, and they spend their summer abroad talking nonstop, where we learn that Sunny sold his software company for $40 million. He originally is from Pakistan and then moved to India and finally to California. He went to college in 1986, so what is he doing on a senior immersion trip to China? His father was an inventor and businessman, and his mother was in India when his father died. The two bond over speaking Mandarin and how Elizabeth wants to help people while becoming a billionaire along the way. They develop a strong friendship over their month-long being together, and both agree to meet up in August of 2002 in Palo Alto, California. Still, even in college, Elizabeth is talking with Sunny every day, telling him how much she loves it at Stanford. Elizabeth attends the Physicians and Scientists of 2002 2002 tech conference, where the keynote speaker is Phyllis Gardner. Elizabeth, motivated by this speech, is insistent on getting into a upper grad level research group as a freshman. She eventually is let in after her TA, who is in the research group, shows her some of his notes and is able to fix an error on the test they are running. As a sophomore, Elizabeth comes up with a patch-like device that would be able to disperse the correct amount of antibiotic medication into one's body. But it's told that this invention would never be possible since there's no way regulating the patch dosing someone too high by Phyllis Gardner. Sick patients are humans, not machines. Science is trying, and that is the exact advice that Dr. Gardner gives Holmes. Elizabeth tells her professor of her grad level research group, Channing Robertson, that she is ready to start her own company and if he will back her. Jerry Yang and David Filo started Yahoo while they were at the same program as her in Stanford, so he knows her professor is good. Then we flash forward to Elizabeth's deposition, where she admits that something happened that made her drop out of Stanford, but doesn't recall any details from all those years ago. We found out that at a college party, Elizabeth was sexually assaulted. She went to the police to report it, but nothing ever came out of her report. She started withdrawing from her social groups, schoolwork, etc. She even tells Sonny how it's weird that they talk so much, being as she's 19, he needs to talk to people his own age, and to not call her again. Elizabeth attends a school trial against the boy who assaulted her, where no disciplinary action will be taken. It was her word against his. And the council didn't believe her. She can't do anything because no one believed her. At her sorority, Noelle Holmes forces her daughter to drop out. If she can't put away what happened to her and forget it, she needs to leave the school. In March of 2004, she proposes to Channing Robertson a blood test machine no bigger than an iPod in size that people can use in their own home, where just one drop can save your life. You would no longer need a needle again. She starts research in East Palo Alto office space, creating a company, dropping out of Stanford, and had her parents invest her tuition money into the startup Theranos. When Richard Fuse hears that Elizabeth has started a company, he is outraged that she didn't come to him for business advice, chalking it up to Elizabeth thinking she is better than Richard. Episode 1 closes with another flash forward to the deposition, where the interrogator tells her that Theranos was a tech operation. It was always the company over humans' lives. Elizabeth adamantly denies that this, saying they were always trying to do the right thing. So we flash forward to 2 years later in 2006, and it is now demoing day of the prototype machine at Theranos that was built with Elizabeth's tuition money. I hope I say this right. Rakesh Dhawan and Edmund Koo, the head scientists of the project, fire up the machine, while Ian Gibbons, who is essentially Elizabeth's mentor there, oversee the tests. Right before the tests, Elizabeth gives a big speech asking her staff what they would do if they knew they couldn't fail. What they're doing will be able to give everyone in America accessible healthcare. That was the company's mission statement. The machine starts running a reliable and relatively easy blood test, sepsis, on only 8 microliters of blood, essentially a little more than a drop of blood. But the demo fails. The machine drains all the energy from the building, and it is revealed that Elizabeth is months past due on her office bills. The failed test just cost $200 a cartridge, and in the 2 years since Elizabeth has dropped out of college, she had raised over $6 million from family and friends. All that money was riding on that one failed demo test that had just taken place. Elizabeth is told by her team that she needs to go and find more investors. The blood testing industry is worth $7 billion, and big investors would jump at the chance to invest in this company. It was no longer how long it would take them to run out of the initial investment money, but rather when. However, Elizabeth is basically just a girl with a high school degree and a college dropout. She had no business plan nor plans on how to scale the business or technology. Ian was teaching her basic chemistry after hours in the lab. She has no true experience in science, nor is she a chemist, so she really has no reason to be owning a science tech company. Channing Robertson, Elizabeth's Stanford professor, had joined her at the company as the head of engineering on the board, and through him they were able to secure a meeting with the Don Lucas Venture Group. After the meeting at Don Lucas Venture Group, Don Lucas shows up unannounced at the Theranos office, wanting to see the machine in action before they sign a deal. They are stalling him with a tour while the lab workers try to get everything in order, resulting in dozens of vials of blood being dropped on Rakesh. Now, the blood is untested, which means that there's a chance he could be infected with a blood disease from direct exposure, while also losing blood they needed for testing. There are no regulations in this lab, and Elizabeth walks in with no hairnet, no lab coat, no shoe covers, nothing. However, Elizabeth is an amazing salesperson, so she delves into a whole spiel about how there is only 2 major companies in the blood testing industry, LabCorp and Quest, who run all their tests on ancient machines. People are pricked with needles who have trypanophobia. Running these tests are expensive and customers are at the mercy of the two companies, having to pay their price. What they are trying to do at Theranos is make healthcare more affordable. Imagine it. Being on the battlefield, the army can have one of their small machines test the blood of their soldiers on site, no longer waiting for a medic. Don Lucas is told that they just have to believe in Elizabeth and everything will be okay. He responds by setting up a meeting with Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle Data, who revolutionized cloud data. If he is in, the Don Lucas Venture Group isn't. So Elizabeth now lives with Sonny, who she is still dating. Her parents know about him, but he is a secret to everyone at work. He coaches her for her meeting with Larry, telling her to remind him that blood prices are still high. Don't use her giddy voice, and never say the word awesome. Elizabeth meets with Larry Ellison on a yacht where it is just like a frat guy who quizzes Elizabeth on who she is as a person and nothing about the business she's trying to create. He asks if she plans on having a husband or kids because that will slow her down as a leader, and if she has aggressively fired someone yet. If she has a fighting spirit to run a billion-dollar company, as long as she adapts the attitude GTFM, aka get the fucking money, Larry Ellison isn't. The machine is still not working. Employees are working 12-day shifts, 24 hours a day. People are being replaced and blood in the machine keeps clotting. Finally, they get a positive reading back on the machine. A trial worked and there is no sepsis that in the blood they had tested. The team packs up and travels to Switzerland with the problem machine that has only worked in one trial. But the night before the meeting, the machine won't run, and employees have to give their own blood so they can test the machine until it works. 6 people on the marketing team are there and only 2 scientists. Whatever they do, the machine won't run. So Elizabeth fakes the whole live demo using a reading saved from the machine that works that one time, securing the funding at $165 million. Now Edmund, one of the head scientists, learns that the demo was faked because Elizabeth sent a man in to send her the trial results that worked to take for the demo. She admits this to her boyfriend Sonny, who tells her as long as no one knows, they are okay. Then in a really awkward scene, Elizabeth admits that she loves Sonny. By July 2017, employees at Theranos are working 7 days a week in 24-hour shifts to get the machine to work. This is around the time that Elizabeth would have graduated from Stanford had she not dropped out. But now she's a millionaire about to change the world and screw everywhere. Now the use of Apple products in 2010's music is kind of atrocious in the show, but in June 2007, Elizabeth waits in line for the first ever iPhone. The woman who designed the iPhone, Anna Ariola, is poached from Apple, losing her $15,000 stock in the company to work for Elizabeth as the head designer for her machine. Elizabeth is on high waters. The board is losing respect for her as she keeps losing money. They can't fire her if she keeps bringing in money though. Now Richard Hughes from earlier has filed a patent that would essentially make it so the technology that she is inventing would need his patent to be produced to the target market. Richard wanted her to buy him off. The machine still isn't working though, and is not ready for the upcoming Pfizer trial, and a contract with Novartis has yet to be received by Theranos for a project. They can't give these two companies any doubt or they will pull out, losing money. Paranoid, every employee was to use swipe cards in order to enter every room, and no one was no longer allowed into departments that they didn't work in. In August of 2007, Edmund and Elizabeth walk into an oncology unit in Nashville, Tennessee in partnership with Pfizer. So they're there to give these oncology patients an Edison machine to take home and test their platelet levels on their own. This oncology unit is focused on people who have blood cancer and getting chemotherapy. A poor sick woman is asking questions, but Edmund can't lie to her no matter how hard Elizabeth tries to get him to, and she needs him to do the job she's paying him to do. She tells him this is just a trial, all big companies do this, and Edmund tells the patient all about the care for her at-home machine. It's delicate, so the machine cannot be near a heater or AC unit or window, nor can it get wet or too dry. Back in Palo Alto, Elizabeth has Edmund sign an NDA about the trip to Nashville. He is then fired and escorted out of the building. It becomes obvious to those around her that Elizabeth needs adult supervision. She doesn't have what it takes to be an effective CEO, and she's still a 23-year-old kid. Both Anna and new hire Avi Terrian talk to Don Lucas about Elizabeth's incapability, which leads to Anna quitting along with her whole design team and being forced to sign an NDA, making sure she takes nothing from the property. Brendan Morris, a newly hired engineer, is separated from the other engineers working on a different machine, which is basically just repurposing a glue dispensing bot. This becomes the new prototype Theranos chooses to go with. They just needed something that works, an inspiring step towards their goal, even if this machine is just minimizing the process of what already exists to test blood. Sonny oversteps his boundaries by going to the Theranos office while Elizabeth was in Nashville, asking questions. This leads to a big fight between the couple. He asks what her plan is. She looks like crap, is working 20-hour days, and needs to start drinking green juice to get her nutritions, which she hates the taste of. Elizabeth tells him he doesn't like the way he's treating her. No one no longer respects her. She's in over her head and is about to lose everything. She needs a plan. She can't help anyone if there's no company. Don Lucas and the board host an after-hours intervention for Elizabeth. They know that the trial with Pfizer and the cancer patients was all false. She's 10 years away from promises she made to the board, and there are no contracts being drawn up by Novartis, so she lied. She had a good idea but is not ready yet. The legal team is bombarded with the lawsuit against Richard Fuse. Her team has been unable to research or develop anything, missing deadlines, having a huge miscalculation on budgets. The board puts in a vote of confidence in Elizabeth to run the company, and they all vote no. She is no longer acting CEO. She needs an adult to supervise her. Don finds someone to become acting CEO. Breaking down crying, Elizabeth says the following to the board after their decision. I did everything right. I followed all steps just too quickly. I got ahead of myself. I'm in over my head. I'm just a girl who had dreams to change the world and needs help. So I reached out to an old friend to bring in $20 million as an investment. As you can guess, this friend is Sonny, who technically only has $40 million, becomes the COO of Theranos, buying back some of the shares for Elizabeth by the end of 2008. In a new building, Theranos has a new home. Rakesh quits after Edmund was fired. Elizabeth is suing Richard, and she now has a new identity she and Sonny crafted to present herself to the world. All black outfits with turtlenecks inspired by her idol Steve Jobs, red lips, a messy low bun, and rings all over her hand. And of course, the iconic deep voice of hers. This is the new branded Elizabeth Holmes as the CEO and founder of Theranos. By 2010, Sonny's $20 million brought into Theranos was gone. The machine named the Edison still doesn't work when pitched to their next company, Walgreens, in March of 2010. Dr. Jay Rosen was the leading head on the board at Walgreens, known for his 1992 foresight to encourage transcription, telehealth, technology, healthcare. Elizabeth pitches to the board. Obama's healthcare bill had just passed. A couple years before, in 2007, Walgreens in-store clinics had failed, and competitor CVS had taken over as the in-store clinic chain, making them known for it. However, Elizabeth pitches having wellness centers in Walgreens stores, a place where people can go to America's favorite pharmacy to get their doctor-ordered blood tests done. The board agrees to a pilot program despite Theranos being FDA approved, which leaves a legal gray area open. Over at Theranos, there are more armed security guards stationed in the front lobby. Sonny has hired minions to micromanage each lab team, and Elizabeth no longer talks to Ian, her head of chemistry, only to investors, hiding something called Project Beta from him, and again, they are out of money. They need investors to keep this straight up. Walgreens makes a visit with one of the heads on the projects, Wade, who works for Walgreens on the board and also is the head of Procter & Gamble for all of West Europe. In tow, a computer scientist named Kevin Hunter needs to see the laboratory where the technology is being held in order to assess if this tech is ready for Walgreens trials. Elizabeth starts stalling because obviously the technology is not ready. The Walgreens crew is placed in a meeting room with snacks of Cliff bars and green juice, and security keeps a tight eye on this group. Using the excuse that they ran a background check on Kevin Hunter, claiming since he once worked for Quest and now is here with Walgreens, they are unsure if he is working as a double agent to duplicate the technology, so before they can even maybe see the lab, he will have to sign an NDA. However, Kevin is adamant that Quest Labs doesn't even know Theranos exists at all, and all he needs to see is that the vitamin D tests work. However, Elizabeth and Sonny persuade the group to eat lunch before checking out the labs. They leave without seeing the labs after Elizabeth and Sonny turn down both Safeway and Walgreens, who they were in secret talks with behind Walgreens' backs, and instead claiming they are going to CVS with the technology. Wade, the head, is persuaded to make a Hail Mary offer after being reminded that kids are running billion-dollar companies in Silicon Valley. They get things done now. They don't wait for a degree anymore. Trying to get the almost working Edison technology fast-tracked to FDA approval, 90-year-old General George Schultz joins Theranos' board. By expanding the board, using the General's connection fast-tracked to FDA approval. Ian learns that Project Beta is the wellness clinics in Walgreens. He confronts Elizabeth, telling her the tech is nowhere near ready and people will be hurt. humans will be hurt. They are not machines. She doesn't understand the science nor the consequences of her actions if she goes through with it. Ian is fired, forced to sign an NDA, and all of his belongings would be sent to his home, being escorted off the premises. Ian Gibbons' team threatens to all quit if he is not reinstated after being fired. Sonny calls Ian, offering him a spot back at Theranos, but he no longer is head of chemistry. Instead, he is placed on a desk job, no longer a lab worker. The number of office people working and the Apple desktop laptops in the show is insane. Both Walgreens and Safeway invest millions of dollars into Theranos. By March 2013, Walgreens wellness centers were in the prototype stage, ready to be put into the Arizona stores. However, Theranos' February deadline has passed. They needed to hurry it up. It's been 3 long years since the $140 million investment, and Walgreens gives Theranos a 6-month longer deadline. No more extensions. They need the Edison to be ready by then. Sonny at headquarters is spearheading the operation, where 8 prototype machines the size of a printer are running at the same time. Smoke and break. Fuse's lawsuit is still going on, where David Boyce is representing Theranos, causing Richard to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Ian Gibbons is subpoenaed due to his name being on all the patents, along with Elizabeth. Ian is still working at Theranos at his desk job, where he spends all his day doing nothing, having been banned from the lab and all meeting emails. He hadn't conducted experimental chemistry in over 3 years, but he needs the health insurance or he would just quit the job. He's freaking out because if Ian tells the truth, he violates his NDA and will get sued. If not, he commits perjury. However, all the patents are in Elizabeth's name, but she did none of the work. Theranos' patents would become invalid. Ian is no longer showing up at work and no one has been able to contact him. His doctors have signed a letter for his work showing he is unwell while Ian drinks all day at home. He's scared about who would want to hire him since he's old. Ian is found in his home bathroom, overdosed on Tylenol and alcohol. He is transported to the hospital, where it is revealed he is believed to have ended his own life from stress of the upcoming lawsuit. Theranos takes everything work-related from his home, leaving his widow, Rochelle Gibbons, alone, even taking Ian's laptop to control what is on it. The only thing Elizabeth can say when she found out is that they won the lawsuit against Fruit, being as Ian can no longer testify. Brandon, the lab head, sends out a company-wide email remembering Ian and his patent credits, ending in Brandon being fired. Richard Fuse refuses to give up, hell-bent on finding out the truth. So he calls Phyllis Gardner, and the only thing she says is the only thing Richard needs to know is that Elizabeth is a fraud. Back at Theranos, launch phases are going on non-stop. They try to configure the Edison machine to run less blood, but it isn't working. So Sonny suggests using the Siemens machines. They have been used for years and are reliable and people trust them. However, Elizabeth claims that that is not their IP, so they can't break the machine open to change the IP to run their tests. Siemens machines are the machines that all blood tests are run on. No matter where you go, that's where they run your blood. They eventually do, changing the video software program and running large blood samples on these Siemens machines. Walgreens doesn't have to know. Then the Theranos website language changed from all you need is 1 drop to a few drops is all you need. Theranos has lost $92 million in that year of 2013 and had lost $57 million in 2012. George Strute's grandson, Tyler, is graduating from Stanford as a biology major and wants an internship at Theranos. Tyler starts his first day as Brandon is escorted out, warning Tyler to get out. Leave on his first day. Elizabeth hosts a party to reveal the new Theranos logo, where people are clapping for her tragic story, claiming how she spent summers with her uncle and how she loved him so much, but his diagnosis of brain cancer came too late. There was no time for her family to say goodbye. If only they had known sooner. So here at Theranos, they work hard so no one has to say goodbye too soon. But Elizabeth was never close to her uncle and never spent summers with him. Elizabeth ends her speech by saying that Theranos is not her company. It is not just her job. It is her religion. It is giving cult. The Walgreens launch is in 48 hours. Elizabeth will throw a party for anything. She cuts the Walgreens clinic's ribbon, throws a Halloween party, and runs around like a child. Tyler Schultz befriends a recent grad named Erica, I'm not going to say her last name right, Chuing, who was recruited from a job fair. Erica has to sign 2 NDAs and is told that no one can know where she works. Now, there are more office workers than lab workers at Theranos. Around this time, the Theranos ad, directed by Errol Morris, starring a haunting-looking Elizabeth Holmes, aired. By October 2013, the Walgreens wellness centers were up and running. People were getting full vials of blood drawn, then placed into a biohazard box that was just sitting on the counter, unlabeled, with everyone's blood vials in the box to be sent off to the lab for testing. So people would come in with their doctor orders to get blood tested, and Walgreens would always say that the Edison machine was down, so they would have to take the full sample of blood. There was no Edison machine, and also you can't just leave blood unlabeled on a counter. It's dangerous. It will clot. It will get bad. Wall Street journalist John Carreyrou is contracted by Richard and tells him to call a pathologist named Adam Clapper to help expose the pathology Medicare fraud at Theranos. Elizabeth is doing non-stop interviews, and the overall thought Phyllis Gardner has is, how many chances are women gonna get to be a CEO of a major startup, and Elizabeth is fucking it up for all women. Now all women have to face the consequences of her action. Rochelle, Ian's widow, Richard and Phyllis get together to talk about everything they know about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, when they come to the conclusion that everything Elizabeth has done is a fraud. The trio calls the Wall Street Journal reporter so Rochelle can tell him that Elizabeth didn't invent anything, but her testimony can't be used because the trio are technically secondary sources. Back at Theranos, there are 5 armed security guards at the door. Erica and Tyler are getting close when Erica learns that there is another lab nicknamed Normandy, which has cutting-edge technology and security, where all the actual science tests are run in that lab. It is now 11 years since her dropout. Elizabeth is about to be 30 and has no idea who she is as a person. So that gives you an idea of how much time has passed. Erica is moved to Normandy when she is taught that when running blood, if an data entry point is not doing what Theranos wants to see it do, just delete all the outliers. How they are cherry-picking data to have 95% accuracy when really the accuracy is about 65%. It's a drastic difference. Normandy is also having their science dilute the blood samples. Again, dangerous. And not how blood testing is done. Erica finally understands that people just want to please Elizabeth at any cost. So even though Tyler and Erica are no longer allowed to hang out and talk, they still do it behind everyone's backs. Tyler learns all this and talks to Elizabeth over at his granddad's home for a weekend brunch, asking what is going on. Normandy, where Elizabeth tells him it's just new tech stuff in that lab. In Normandy, while working on Thanksgiving, Erica runs tests while the machine fails 2 quality control checks, giving her inaccurate results. She manually types the results in when she sees that a sticker is placed on top of one of the big machines in the back of the lab. Pulling the sticker back, she sees that they are actually running their test on Siemens machines. So Tyler and Erica agree for her to gather as much evidence as possible and follow it until she figures out what's truly going on. Tyler then takes this new information and talks to his granddad George about Elizabeth, asking if he knows that blood tests are being run on Siemens machine. But George has no idea what his grandson is talking about. Tyler and Erica draft an email to the head of Theranos, laying out the evidence of misconduct they had found, but only Tyler signs the email. However, both of them are fired. Erica is devastated because she needs the job, she has rent to pay, and she reveals that in her first year at Berkeley, she was assaulted and almost dropped out, mirroring Elizabeth's own reasons for dropping out of school. After getting fired, Erica and Tyler eat lunch with his granddad and step-grandma, Charlotte, to discuss all the secrets Elizabeth is hiding. But George tells the pair that there are no questions. They simply don't have all the information or context. They're just petulant and immature. Tyler doesn't back down, telling him the demo she did for him was fake. George yells, telling them what Elizabeth is doing is pure good to save lives. And how can Erica be so selfish? As a female scientist, Elizabeth paved the way for her career. John Carreyrou calls Erica and Tyler to talk about his investigation into Theranos. Richard gets into contact with the head of the Theranos lab, Mark Rossler, who gives him insider knowledge about the labs. They both are doctors who took a Hippocratical oath to do no harm to others. Mark tells Richard about the coolers they keep the blood in that were left unintended to bake in the sun, causing the blood to clot, which became unusable, then diluted and tested using Siemens machine. This blood that was sent from Walgreens to be tested at Theranos was mistreated and then was giving patients inaccurate results because it wasn't treated right. The last point in episode 6 is how the only reason Elizabeth has gotten so far in her career, especially in the tech and business world with sophisticated chemistry and engineering, was because Silicon Valley liked to feel good about themselves. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl leading the revolution. It's pretty valid. It's a valid point. Elizabeth is rarely in the Theranos office, constantly attending events and interviews. In 2015, she was interviewed by Bill Clinton, always on her private jet, drinking green juice, driving her red Lamborghini, attending the Time 100 red carpet, being on Joe Biden's interview panel, all while Theranos clinics are giving inaccurate test results to patients. Mark Rossler downloads 782 files onto a hard drive at Theranos to give to the Wall Street journalist, but security guards are alerted to this attempt. Being tipped off, Linda Tanner, head of the in-house legal team, investigates and discovers that Mark Rossler, Phyllis Gardner, Tyler Schrodt, and Ian Gibbons are the whistleblowers, and the questions journalist is asking about Theranos are sloppy, with obvious sources, defamation towards HIPAA. There will be consequences if they each break their NDAs. Trying to do damage control, Elizabeth and Sunny delete all their emails sent to them about concern with Theranos practices. The email Tyler and Erica sent, and also emails from Arizona doctors who were using the Edison machines in their clinics that were not working and giving inaccurate results. Sunny flies to Arizona and makes these doctors sign NDAs and pays them all off. Now that potential lawsuit from those doctors are void for 2 years and they can't sue for 2 years. All Theranos employees are made to sign new NDAs. Tyler's grandfather isn't believing him, but his step-grandma Charlotte does, and she calls their attorney, who tells him he should never sign that NDA that's being forced onto him by Theranos, and to just face the fact that he's going to be sued. So he does get sued, and George stops talking to his grandson. What is happening in Normandy gets back to Walgreens, who is furious. Mark is obviously fired and was replaced by a dermatologist, who is now head of lab directors. A dermatologist! While this whole mess is going on, the FDA approves Theranos for herpes testing, and Elizabeth throws a party for it. She just will throw a party for anything. Theranos also gets a new investor named Rupert Murdoch, who just so happens to be the owner of Wall Street Journal, the very place that the whistleblower case is being investigated, and Rupert invested $125 million into Theranos, the most ever invested by one person. So Elizabeth then takes out a newspaper article in the Wall Street Journal to brag about her success and approval for the herpes test. Now, to the public, Elizabeth's career is skyrocketing. She has a valued net worth of $4 billion and just became a global ambassador to the Obama administration. Theranos hires lawyer David Boies to kill the Wall Street Journal article. He gets Theranos' lawyer and team in a room with the Wall Street Journal team to get the record straight for both sides. They know the article will probably come out, but they're trying to get it to the best of their abilities to make Theranos look good. In this meeting, John Carreyrou puts forth 80 questions for Theranos to answer, including what the new technology in Normandy was, asking what it was supposed to do. But it was all trade secret info, so they would not share it. They asked about why they have semen machines in the lab, and Theranos says it's for comparison purposes. John asked why on the Theranos website a few drops of blood marketing is now gone. Again, they refused to answer. John was able to catch Theranos contradicting themselves, so they were about to release the expose. George and Rupert try to cancel the story. Elizabeth is now on the Harvard medical staff of fellows and home support team with Phyllis Gardner, along with advising the dean of medical school of entries. Phyllis, one of the whistleblowers, tells Elizabeth that this scandal is going to screw over all women with whom they can go to or trust. It was never just about Elizabeth. Her lawyers tell her to lie that as a CEO, she can deny reading any of her emails that weren't about lab practices. She gets so many of them. In the last episode, we are now in October of 2015, where Elizabeth is now drinking coffee. The article has come out and damage control is happening. Sunny is calling all investors for board members, saying that the article is about to come out, warning them because they are sexist against women in power. Sunny starts discussing options for himself to save him from repercussions of this. Erica decides to write a letter of complaint to CMS, or Center for Medicare and Medicaid, the government agency, and a complaint must be investigated with this agency. This time, Erica decides to sign her name on the letter, so when Elizabeth finds out she was the one that sent it, she has reason to be mad. With the CMS, they have to investigate, like I said, and Elizabeth can't just sweet talk herself out of the review this time. Gary Yamato is sent by CMS to inspect Theranos lab. What Gary finds is that they mail their products to Quest Labs to be tested. So he forces them to shut down all labs for 2 years in 2016 of February. So they're taking the blood that's being shipped to them and shipping it to Quest. Make it make sense. John Carreyrou receives a copy of this report and adds it to his article. When the investigation is happening, Elizabeth was awarded Woman of the Year. Inside, the Theranos board was appalled by Elizabeth's gross failure of management and how they have to do something. Make moves to fix the image of the company during this period of federal bureaucracy red tape. Sunny speaks to a lawyer threatening Elizabeth. He is going to release old texts between the two to protect himself. He's been taking her blame for 6 years, working day in and day out to build her dream and passions, not his. Elizabeth tells him that the best option is for him to take the fall, to transition out of the company, and she's grateful to him. They have known each other since she was just a girl, barely 18 years old, when they met. He taught her everything she knows and is insinuating in a way that Sunny groomed her. They are tied together, but now he needs to move out of the house that they share. Sunny misses a board meeting when Elizabeth announces that Sunny is stepping down for Elizabeth, and that's it between the two. On June 11, 2017, while being interviewed by the FBI, they ask Elizabeth about her lack of transparency at Theranos and her relationship with Sunny. She tells him that the romantic piece of the relationship died that day he stepped down. They are no longer colleagues. Once he was no longer at Theranos, they were no longer friends. Yes, he may have invested 12 years with her, but went ghost after that day. All he was a mediocre software engineer. Back in 2016, Elizabeth, while driving her blue Tesla, had no fear of going to jail with her team of lawyers. She knew she wouldn't be able to go. In an act of apologizing to the public, Elizabeth goes on a morning talk show with 5 million viewers. All she has to do is apologize for Sunny's mistakes and move on. She has to be emotional, devastated, bring warm energy, but also be herself. This appearance doesn't go to plan when the host asks why CMS shut down a lab of a $9 billion company. Due to the shutdown, the Theranos patents were in jeopardy. Elizabeth just says that they have a better leader now, a new team and lab. She never put people's health in danger. The article has gone live at this point. Theranos is in ruins. The office is empty with broken lab equipment and needles laying array, and Elizabeth is now going by the new nickname Lizzie, given by her boyfriend Billy Evans, who is in his 20s, and she's finally happy. She is touring the Theranos office with her husky dog, being told by Linda what the charges she is facing are. Elizabeth is legally barred from running a company for the next 10 years. She could possibly go to jail for 20 years, wearing a white t-shirt, exercise pants, no longer wearing all black or puffer jackets. A sense of self has returned to Elizabeth. But she's still defensive about all of Theranos did was fail to deliver what they promised. That it's not a crime to do that. Linda tries to make Elizabeth understand that she hurt people. She must understand what she did was wrong. But Elizabeth just doesn't care. She pops in her AirPods and looks at her Apple Watch while running out of Theranos building away from Linda. She no longer has any fancy car, ordering a $20 Uber economy, and screaming her head off in what I can only assume is a mental breakdown and scaring her poor dog, Balto. That's where the series ends. These are the updates given by the show as follows. On August 29, 2018, Elizabeth Holmes and her boyfriend Billy Evans attended Burning Man together, which is a festival which apparently has very nefarious things happen at it. What remained of Theranos began the formal dissolution process on September 7th, 2018. In the end, $700 million of investors' money was lost and 800 people lost their jobs. Between 2013 and 2016, Theranos sent over 7.8 million test results to Arizona patients. Inaccurate results included a false HIV positive test, a false cancer diagnosis, and a false indication of miscarriage. Female entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley still struggle to find investors in the wake of Theranos' scandal. One female founder was told to dye her hair darker so she looked less like Elizabeth Holmes. Erica Chung spent 3 days on stand giving testimony during Elizabeth Holmes' trial. She is now co-founder of a nonprofit company called Ethics in Entrepreneurship. George Schultz never apologized to Tyler Schultz. However, before George's death in 2021, he finally told his grandson that he had done the right thing, and by exposing Elizabeth. Sunny Balwani was indicated on 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and 9 counts of wire fraud. His trial is scheduled to begin jury selection in March of 2022. Balwani's lawyer claims that Sunny could not have committed fraud because he never made any money from Theranos. Makes no sense because they were spending luxury. In 2021, Billy Evans and Elizabeth Holmes became new parents. Later that year, a California jury found Elizabeth Holmes guilty of 3 counts of fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to defraud public investigators. She remains free awaiting sentencing. She could spend up to 20 years in prison. The show is based on the ABC podcast, The Dropout. And that was everything the show gave us. Now, let's get into the real story. So let's start with behind the scenes first. The actors playing these characters. Amanda Seyfried, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, originally said no to playing the role of Elizabeth Holmes, so Kate McKinnon was going to take on the role, but then Amanda changed her mind and took the role. As they were filming the series, the actual trial for Elizabeth Holmes was happening, so new pieces of information were being revealed. Amanda Seyfried also had a voice coach to healthily reach the deep voice of Elizabeth. She was quoted saying, "My biggest fear was that I don't want to do anything to my vocal cords that's unhealthy, if I can help it." For her role as Elizabeth, Amanda Seyfried received an Emmy Award for Best Actress in a Limited Series in September of 2022. I do think she actually did deserve the award. More facts, Stephen Fry, who plays Ian Gibbons, spoke to the real-life widow of Ian's, Rochelle Gibbons, in order to learn who exactly Ian was as a person. There are many cast members in the show, but one the series does not include is John Ioannidis. Ioannidis was a professor at Stanford when in 2015 he wrote to the Journal of American Medical Association's column about how Theranos wouldn't tell anyone about the technology they were making. Ioannidis was a big name wondering about what the company was hiding. Now let's get into the show's differences to real life. Remember Elizabeth's original patch machine business? Well, her original name for Theranos was Real-Time Cures, but later came to realize people were skeptical of the word cure. The relationship between Elizabeth and Sunny was pretty accurate in the show, minus 2 minor details. They met during her immersion program in Belgium, China, when she was 18 and he was 37. However, it wasn't Holmes' first time in Belgium. She spent at least 3 high school summers participating in the Mandarin program. Elizabeth met Sonny the last summer before her first semester at Stanford, at which point she was struggling with being bullied, and he became her only friend. Also, Bawani was previously married to a Japanese artist named, not gonna say this right, Keiko Fujimoto, when he met Holmes in 2002. Bawani and Fujimoto divorced at the end of that year, but Holmes likely didn't play a role in their decision to split, since Fujimoto filed for divorce in February of 2002, before Bawani even met Holmes that summer. In the show, in order to keep her position as CEO, she has Sonny invest $20 million into the company. While this is true, it was only a loan of about $13 million. When it comes to Elizabeth's voice, many believe she faked her usually deep voice, perhaps to be taken seriously as a female CEO in a male-dominated Silicon Valley. In her fraud trial, Elizabeth spoke in her signature baritone while testifying. To this day, it's very unclear if Holmes was just putting on a front voice all this time or if her voice is actually naturally that low. However, I do have this clip of Elizabeth apparently changing her voice to her normal voice during an interview, so you tell me.
This is what happens when you work to change things, and first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world. And I have to say I personally was shocked to see that the Journal would publish something like this.
No, it hasn't. Well, if I use traditional words to describe what we're doing, it's hard because people then associate it with conventional processes for analyzing drugs in development or whatever aspects we may be applying our technology to. But no, it hasn't. Well, if I use traditional words.
When it came to scoping out the labs by Walgreens, many investors and partners believed Theranos technology had been validated by major pharmaceutical companies, even though that was not the case. This owed partly to the fact that Elizabeth put the logos of industry giants Pfizer and Schering-Plough on validation reports. In her trial, Elizabeth testified that she slapped on the logos because this work was done in partnership with those companies, and I was trying to convey that. I also want to note here, Elizabeth came to Walgreens with the ideas of wellness clinics, and while her version didn't work out, Walgreens does have wellness clinics to this day. They have where you can go in and go get your blood drawn from your doctor and have it sent to be tested. They have where you can go in and see someone, like a little clinic, in a couple of Walgreens that I know of. So I mean, something came out of her idea. The legal side of the Dropout is more fictionalized than real life. Linda Tanner, Theranos' lead lawyer, is fabricated as a character. She's actually a composite of various Theranos lawyers. Surprisingly, about 90% of the show was accurate, and the remaining 10% of untruth was actually just exaggerations on the legal portion, small fabrications in the investment prices, and adding characters who just weren't real. Being so, I will not be retelling the story because we literally just went through it and it's pretty accurate. I told you basically what was different. So instead, I'm going to tell you about the trials of Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes and COO Sonny Bawani, because those just wrapped up and they are very interesting trials. From now on, I will be pulling from multiple different articles. Honestly, it was pretty hard to piece together the trials because there were so many different reports. Also, as a reminder, I will now be putting the real life faces of people on the screen so you can see what they really looked like compared to the actors that were cast on The Dropout. Before we get into the trials, in June 2019, Elizabeth and her long-term boyfriend, Billy Evans, got married. He was 27 and she was 35. He is the heir to the Evans Hotel Group, graduated from MIT in 2015, worked at LinkedIn and Luminar. The two met in 2017. Holmes was seen wearing Evans' MIT singlet ring, and a former colleague told the following to the New York Post. Billy and the MIT ring, they are inseparable. He could snap his finger and have a AAA diamond engagement ring instantly if he wanted to. But if you give her some extravagant ring, it could end up owned by the feds if she was to give up her material possessions. Which is a pretty savage to say, but I mean, it's true. The couple also share a son named William Holmes Evans, who was born on July 10, 2021. This pregnancy delayed Elizabeth's trial many more times after being rescheduled due to COVID. Many people believe that Elizabeth purposely became pregnant in order to delay her trial and persuade jurors to give her a more lenient sentence, which is a pretty harsh conspiracy theory. But when you add in this tidbit that in November of 2022, it was announced that Elizabeth was expecting her second trial. So she got pregnant with the first trial during her real trial, and then it was revealed during her sentencing trial this year that she became pregnant with her second child, and per court filings, she became pregnant after being convicted in January of 2022. Add in that in November, her conviction sentencing was happening, where you can see that she was visibly pregnant November 2022. It just makes a pretty damning case. Also, it suggests that Elizabeth will give birth either in jail or right before she turns herself into federal authorities on April 27, 2023. Believe what you want with this pregnancy thing. I personally don't know how I feel about it. I personally don't know if I have an opinion on it, but I just thought I would tell you about it. In March 2018, Holmes and former Theranos president Ramesh Bhawani were charged with allegedly raising more than $700 million from investors through an elaborate years-long fraud by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Holmes and Theranos settled with the SEC, with Holmes agreeing to pay $500 million and be barred from serving as a director or officer of a public company for 10 years. That means she can still be an owner of a private company. She has not admitted or denied any wrongdoing with regard to the settlement. 3 months later, the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco charged Holmes and Bhawani with 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Another count of wire fraud was added in 2020, bringing the total number of felony charges to 12. Prosecutors allege that Holmes and Bhawani were involved in a multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud investors, as well as a plan to defraud doctors and patients by claiming the company could provide its clients with cheap, fast, and reliable blood tests and results. Holmes and Bhawani pleaded not guilty to their charges. While Holmes' trial started in late August 2021, Bhawani's trial began in January of 2022. Elizabeth's trial ran from August 2021 to January 2022, where basically it came down to the fact that Elizabeth knew to an extent everything that was happening at Theranos, but would lie to investigators and companies such as Walgreens by omitting the truth by using protection of trade secrets. Holmes acknowledged she knew investors lost money, but said she didn't mislead them about Theranos because even though they were presenting functions that Theranos could accomplish in 5 to 10 years, it didn't mean they were capable of those things right now. However, Theranos was presenting these functions as something they could accomplish right now, given that they opened wellness clinics with Walgreens centered around their technology. During the nearly 4-month federal trial in San Jose, California, jurors heard from nearly 30 witnesses called by prosecutors. Together, they painted Holmes as a charismatic entrepreneur who secured hundreds of millions of dollars in investment for a medical device that never delivered on her promises. The narrative that Holmes began laying out is the centerpiece of her defense, that her company was her life's work that ultimately failed, not fraud, as the U.S. Attorney's Office has charged. The defense also laid blame on Ramesh Bhawani, her former business partner and ex-boyfriend. During the trial, Elizabeth, while on the stand for more than 20 hours, accused Bhawani of emotional and sexual abuse, allegations that he denies, saying that this abuse clouded her judgment. On the stand, Elizabeth said she wished she had handled some key business matters differently, but she blamed others for the downfall of Theranos. She said lab directors whom she trusted were the ones closest to the technology, and she said Bhawani, not her, oversaw the company's financial forecasts, which were later discovered to be grossly inflated. She was just the face of the company. The move was seen by legal experts as dicey, since accusations of abuse is not a legal defense in a white-collar criminal trial. After more than 50 hours of deliberations over 7 days, the jury of 8 men and 4 women convicted Holmes of 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud for lying to investors about devices developed by Theranos. The jury found Holmes not guilty on 4 of their fraud-related charges connected to allegations. She duped patients who received false or faulty results from tests conducted by Theranos. The jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on 3 other counts tied to investor fraud. Elizabeth, 37 at the time, had no visible reaction to the verdict. Along with those who lost large sums of money were media mogul Rupert Murdoch, former Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, and Walmart's Walton family. Ahead of Elizabeth Holmes' November 2022 sentencing, her husband Billy Evans pleaded with the court to give her a lesser sentence, explaining that she would miss so many special moments with their son. And I quote, "My heart is broken with the thought of spending any days away from Liz. For a future in which my son grows up with a relationship with his mother on the side of a glass armed by guards," he said in his memo. Which, yes, I totally understand and agree that a child should not be separated from his mother and only see her from behind a glass window. However, Elizabeth still has to face the consequences for the fraud she committed, the actions she did before her son was even born, before she was even married, the investigators she defrauded, and the hope that she gave to the public. Those 2 things don't cancel each other out. Also, let's be real here, okay? Elizabeth is a pretty white blonde blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who comes from an affluent family, married, wealthy, and is being sentenced to a white-collar crime. She'll be out of jail in half her sentence and will be sent to a nice white-collar prison. That's just how America works. On November 18th, 2022, with both her mother and husband by her side, Elizabeth was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. The sentence also includes a fine of $100 of each count of fraud. The restitution's amounts will be set at a later date. Prior to her sentencing, Elizabeth was given a last opportunity to speak to the court. Through tears, she expressed regret for letting down the people who believed in us, stating, "I am devastated by my failings. Every day for the past years, I have felt a deep pain for what people went through because I failed them. I regret my failings with every cell of my body." In the statement preceding the sentencing, the federal judge Edward Davila painted a picture of Silicon Valley as being formerly rural agriculture center that became critical for innovation around the world. He said its legacy depended on the ability of investors to make decisions free from lies and misinterpretations. This is a fraud case where an exciting venture went forward with great expectations and hope, only to be dashed by misrepresentations, hubris, and plain lies. Davila said the court had calculated a total loss of $384 million in investments and $121 million losses in share value that had been attributed directly to Holmes' fraud. He also found that Holmes, through Theranos, had defrauded more than 10 investors. One of those investors was George Schultz, whose son Alex told the courts on the havoc that Theranos had caused their family, especially since his son, George's grandson, Tyler, was a whistleblower. He claims Tyler lived in fear after Holmes hired private investigators to track him due to his whistleblowing. And I quote, "My son slept with a knife under his pillow every night thinking someone would come and murder him. My family home was desecrated by Elizabeth." Judge Davila ordered 3 years of supervised release once Holmes is out of prison, so probation. He will set a hearing date to determine the amount of restitution she must pay. Holmes was ordered to surrender herself into custody in April 2023, although her lawyers are expected to ask that she remains free and on bail while she appeals her sentence. Federal prosecutors have suggested the judge sentence Holmes to 15 years in prison and require her to pay $800 million in restitution, while her lawyers requested a sentencing of no more than 18 months to be served on house arrest. More than 130 people submitted letters of support for Holmes ahead of the hearing, including Evans and Senator Cory Booker, who said, "I firmly believe in the possibility of rehabilitation in the power of redemption for anyone," Booker wrote of Elizabeth, whom he said he considered a friend. A week before her sentencing, her defense team submitted a letter to the court stating, "Miss Holmes is no danger to the public. She has no criminal history, has a perfect pretrial service client's record, and is described by the people who know her as repeatedly as a gentle and loving person who tries to do the right thing." So we'll see if Elizabeth actually goes to jail. Now, there is a lot less coverage on Ramesh Bhawani's case trial, so here's what I did find. In March of 2022, the 56-year-old's trial began and ran till January 2021 and ran through late 2022. To make its case against Bhawani, the government called 24 witnesses as it sought to convince jurors that he knowingly and intentionally lied to and deceived investors and patients in order to get money for Theranos. As with Holmes' case, the government sought to untangle the layers of alleged fraud for jurors, including concealing use of third-party manufacturer machines, overstating financials, misrepresenting work with pharmaceutical companies and the military, and leveraging the media to perpetuate the scheme. The defense, on the other hand, called 2 witnesses to testify. During opening and closing arguments, it portrayed Bhawani as having acted in good faith and having believed in the company's technology. It also argued prosecutors cherry-picked information to prove its case and cast doubt on whether the government had enough evidence for the jury to find Bhawani guilty. Jury deliberations stretched for 4 full days following a lengthy trial, and that got underway in March. With opening statements, a jury of 5 men and 7 women determined that Bhawani had defrauded both patients and investors, finding him guilty on all 12 charges he faced, which included 10 counts of federal wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Then on December 7, 2022, Sunny was sentenced to 12 years and 11 months in prison. That is all I have on this case. He did get a larger sentence. So here are some closing thoughts. When it comes to these cases, many people like Anna Delvey, another fraudster, which I have a video on. I will link it wherever site it's on. With Anna, people see that she scammed banks and the rich to become an A-lister herself so people support her. But with Elizabeth Holmes, she scammed investors, insurance, and gave real people fake medical results, which is why most of the public doesn't like her. In that sense, Anna's show actually launched her into a celebrity status that she now gets to reap the benefits of her fraud, which we say that's a great thing. And with Elizabeth, well, she's seen as a disgrace. In a nutshell, they basically did the same thing, but one scammed the rich and the other scammed the rich and the people. You see what I'm trying to say here? Like, they basically went to jail for fraud, but for different things, and they both are, one's loved and one's hated. So I don't feel bad for either of them. I felt like it's an interesting insight to point out, and I still don't know exactly how the Edison was supposed to work, like an iron level test, because basically if you've ever had an iron level anemia test, it's where they poke your finger with like a staple like contraption, and then they squeeze your finger that they just poked a tiny little hole in until it bleeds into a tube that's like this long. They go and they run that blood, and that's how you get an iron test. Is that how the Edison was supposed to work? Like, you're at home, you're supposed to prick your finger, shove it into a tube, and put it in the Edison? They never explained that, and I don't think Elizabeth ever had a way for it to work. And doesn't that still technically require a needle? I'm so confused on how that actual blood part, taking it, was supposed to work. I also do want to just have a quick little personal conversation about the blood part, because I have experience with that. If you don't want to hear it, just skip to the end. So basically, I have multiple blood disorders. I've had them, I've known about them for about 7-8 years now. And the thing is that blood testing is hard, okay? I've gotten 13 vials done at one time. And I've noticed over the years, because I know I have to get the same test done every couple months, that the amount of blood is taking less and less. So it is getting better, but it's still, I mean, all the tests that I need ran, I can't just do it with a drop of blood. And like, for each test, was it supposed to be like a drop of blood per test? Because am I gonna have to prick all my fingers? I just want to understand how the Edison was supposed to work, and no one ever explains it. Also, the thing with blood is it's very, very delicate. I once had a time where I was at my doctor's, they drew my blood, they sent it off to be tested elsewhere, and the plane broke down that was carrying the blood, the medical plane. So everyone who had their blood in there had to get their blood redrawn. It's very delicate. If it doesn't get done then, it's not gonna happen. So I don't understand how someone who basically had no college degree or understanding of this got this far. Okay, what did you think of the video? I know it was long. This is why I only do these videos once a month. It takes forever to watch the show, take notes on the show, type up those notes, script those notes, look into the other part. It takes forever. I honestly can only do these maybe once a month. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you agree with what I said about Elizabeth, do you like her? Do you not like her? Do you think she deserves to only serve house arrest, or she deserves to go to prison? Honestly, I don't know. Okay, we'll see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if she gets a slap on the wrist, because again, rich white lady. All right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my socials are linked down below if you want to follow any of them. The doggo picture of the day is this picture of Clover, and he found a Doritos bag and was sticking his head in it. He's really cute. All right, love you, mean it, kisses, don't do anything stupid, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.